Hello and welcome to part 2 of my time-lapse workflow walkthrough. It's important, if you haven't watched part 1, to go back and watch that first, otherwise you're going to miss out on some key steps that will affect the rest of the process. The other thing to note is that the tips, tricks and techniques that I'll show you don't just apply to time-lapses, they can be applied to any form of video editing. So with that, let's dive in. In this next part, we'll deal with stabilising the footage. In Premiere Pro, a better way to stabilise it in After Effects, and it'll introduce you to the time-saving hack that I use quite a lot. At the minute, I've got 2 clips here because the drone split the footage into 2 folders. If you've just got 1 clip, you don't need to do this, but what I want is this footage to be 1 clip. So the way to achieve that is to highlight both clips, right click and nest the footage, and we name this sensibly, as we always do, to save confusion. So now we've got the combined footage. Now nesting is quite a useful tool that I'll go into greater depth in another tutorial, but it in effect puts both of those clips into 1 folder, so it's now treated as 1 clip. I want to change this to about 1.5 minute video. So we right click, change time interpolation to optical flow, and then go to speed, right click again, speed duration. Now you can either change the percentage, or if we want this to be exactly 1.5 minutes, we change the figures. 1 minute 30 seconds, and then the number at the end isn't fractions of a second, it's number of frames, and we make sure that's ticked to optical flow. Now, using our keyboard shortcut of /, we have a clip that's exactly 1.5 minutes. As we can see, the footage dances around and has a bit of seasickness to it. It was quite a windy day, and as good as the Mini 2 is at holding its position, over the 20-22 minutes that this footage was shot, it is dancing around in the wind a little bit. So the first thing we need to do is stabilise that. Now we can do that through Warp Stabiliser. Drag that onto the footage, and as you see, it's giving us this warning that you can't use Warp Split Stabiliser and speed adjustments on the same clip. So we clear that, and then we just need to nest that sequence again, and now it will allow us to apply Warp Stabiliser. Warp Stabiliser can be extremely effective, but is best reserved for short clips. This clip being such a long one, as you can see, it's going to take 30 minutes just to analyse and apply the effect. So I'll stop the Warp Stabiliser and remove the effect from the footage, and then render the footage ready for export. And then export your media. Now we need to make sure, this is why we set the sequence settings to Apple ProRes 422. We need to match the settings there, select the file name and the destination, which again is the project folder. We don't want to, there's no audio in at this point, so I'll unclick that. Apple ProRes selected there. Make sure that we've got the right frame size, frame rate, render at maximum depth, use maximum render quality, check use previews because this is where our time saving comes in. Make sure we check import into project and change time interpolation to optical flow, and then we can export. As you can see, it's only going to take 20 seconds to export and bring, a virtually lossless copy of the footage back into Premiere Pro. So we come over to our project panel and we can see we've got the first draft movie has been brought in there. So we'll close down that sequence. We don't lose it, we can always come back to it. It's saved here in the bin. But we can drag over the footage we've just rendered, / to expand the workspace, and just double check our sequence settings because these sometimes change. See, that's changed there. So now that we've brought the rendered movie back in, you can see if we apply warp stabilizer, it's going a lot faster. I'll leave this at 50 at the minute because I know this is really shaky footage. Normally if you go any higher than about 10-15%, you'll start to get artifacting and warping, as the name suggests, in the footage. So normal footage I wouldn't advise going above about 10-15%. We'll leave this at 50 to see how it comes out. So to summarise what we've just done, warp stabilizer was going to take 30 minutes, probably more, to apply. By rendering and exporting the footage, bringing it back in, because we set the sequence settings up properly, we managed to cut that down to around 6 minutes from the 30 minutes, which is quite a significant saving. If the sequence was set up as H.264, then every time you export and re-import you'd be losing quality. But by using ProRes 422, we're not losing quality or not losing any noticeable quality. This little trick of exporting and re-importing isn't just for when you're using warp stabilizer. You can use this trick whenever the timeline is slowing down. Warp stabilizer has done a reasonable job, but as you can see from the horizon, there's still a bit of sea motion going on. But if you don't have After Effects, that's as far as we can really go on stabilization without going down a very lengthy route, which I've made another video on, of manually stabilizing every frame. But we've got 2,000 and odd frames in this, and that would take you quite some time. Another quick tip: if your playback's going slow, rather than having to render the whole timeline out to see what effect your changes have had, you can pick a small clip, set your playhead, press I on the keyboard to set the in point, move forward, press O on the keyboard to set an out point, and then when you go to sequence, render into out, it's only rendering that short clip, so it goes a lot quicker. You can see what effect your changes have had without waiting for the whole timeline to render. So if you don't have After Effects, this next bit won't be applicable. If you do, this is the ultimate way to stabilize the footage that I've found. So if we're going into After Effects, we need to take out the warp stabilizer, right click on the clip and choose Replace with After Effects Composition. Save the After Effects composition with all your project files, keep everything together. I'll call this Stabilize Time Lapse. And we want to make sure we're on our clip and then open the tracker window. If you can't see that, go up to Window and make sure that Tracker is ticked here. So click on your clip, Stabilize Motion, which brings up one track point because we've only got position selected. We want to stabilize position and rotation. And then what you need to do, we need to be dragging these track point boxes to 2 points fairly far apart. The further apart they are, the more the software will be able to stabilize the footage. And you need to pick a high contrast area. So I'll take this first point over to this side of the window and fiddly, but I'll place that there for now. You can scroll with the mouse wheel to zoom in and then use the hand icon up here to move the window around. When you zoomed in, you can be a lot more precise on moving the tracking box. Zoom out, use the hand to move around, and I'm going to pick another place on the horizon. What we want to be picking is spots that we know are going to stay within the frame throughout the duration of the video. So you want a spot that isn't going to go off screen. So After Effects is going to try and keep track of those areas that we've selected within the boxes. Make sure you're at the start of your timeline. Easiest way is to open the preview box, click the left arrow, go back to Tracker, and then select Analyze Forward. Look how slow this is going. We've got a 1.5-minute clip and we've not even got up to half a second yet. So I'll cancel that and go back to the start. And what you need to do is make these boxes a lot smaller. Now when you click Analyze Forward, you can see it's moving at a bit more of a sensible speed. It's an intense process, so grab yourself a coffee while it's doing this. This is an extreme example, being a 1.5 minute long clip that we're stabilising. In most cases you might have a 5-second clip, maybe 10 seconds, that's a little bit shaky, and that'll obviously process a lot faster. What you sometimes notice is that it starts off fast and then starts to slow down. I don't know why, but what seems to help, pause the process and then click Analyze Forward again. Speeds up a little bit. Or if it's still going slow, zoom in with the mouse wheel, tighten up the boxes again. Now that After Effects it's done its thing, you can simply click Apply, apply to X and Y. Hey presto, rock steady footage. So to come out of this, we need to just click Save the project, close After Effects down. And now you can see in Premiere Pro it's turned pink and it says linked composition. So I'll just render that out, just check sequence settings again, make sure nothing's changed, and I'll render that out to see how good a job it's done. Now that's done, let's have a look how it looks. Right, pleased with that.